I've been eager to make this video. We're testing a Norinco model 334, and I'll give you a bit of background. Every time I purchase one of these Chinese cut,
yeah.
I've only had good experiences with rifles from China, from SKSs to this copy of a Berno. I guess it's a Norinco model 15A. They are sold under various names with various model numbers, so you just have to see whether it's an original Berno or a copy. But I find the accuracy of these excellent. I've never had a problem with them, so I was quite interested when I was asked to take a look at the Norinco model 334. And naturally I tried not to be redundant, so I checked online, and there seems to be quite a bit of information, but I'm always happy to take another look. And I have a very modest MAUSER collection. I'm not an expert by any means. There are always people that know a lot more, which is a good thing. So I'll probably just start with the stock. And I'm not sure whether we made a Patreon video or a video on YouTube, but we'll assemble something. And I took this rifle and shot it actually quite a bit in the mountains. I think we have that footage for you. So, I mean, the stock is not too bad, and I may be repeating myself, but I'll just go ahead anyway, because I can never remember what I said. It's a very lightweight wood, and it's probably some kind of, I would call it a jungle wood. It's very light in color, even though you wouldn't think so. To look at it, it has a very dark stain. Good looking stock, and they did an excellent job on the proportions. You know, everything is correct. It's got an open grip. As funny as it sounds, it feels a lot like my Rigby, which has a similar grip configuration. The inletting it probably looks to you, you know, crude, but you know, efficient is as efficient does, and it holds the action. They put a stock recoil lug, which you can see here. There's no splitting. In fact, there are generous gaps for the bottom metal, floor plate, and so on, as well as the action. And typically, if you get splitting, it'll be in here somewhere, but there's a big gap. And I would put the floor plate in for you, but it's a very tight fit. And because of a few things that we're going to discuss, I'll just leave it apart, but I will put the barreled action in place. If you see some work happening here, it's because when I closed the bolt, I heard that hollow sound, and you may know this. When you hear that sound, that typically means the bolt handle is hitting the stock, which means it may not be in full battery, which is not the end of the world. I shot rifles like that for years, not knowing. In any event, I took the Dremel and deepened the bolt handle groove and then touched it up with some epoxy, and I could make that disappear, but I wanted it to be evident so that I would remember to tell you about it during filming. So altogether, this is not a Rigby stock, but it's definitely serviceable. These are inexpensive rifles, and as you may see in the video, I can't remember exactly what we filmed, but it's a MAUSER, so by definition it's going to be very good. But let's take a look at the action. So quite interesting, and as usual, the Chinese steel, you know, they're probably maybe not as advanced, quote unquote, as North American and European steels and maybe some other places, but I actually like the old style steel. These are probably, you know, forgings, and I can imagine the factory, in case I didn't say it, it's in 308, and it says Norinco model 334. People ask me about these things and say I don't talk about enough. Take a look at that front receiver ring. That is a long receiver ring, and that caught my attention right away. So I took out my original MAUSER I call this my Prada gun because of that. It looks like a high-heeled shoe to me. Anyway, we should probably take it out of the stock so you can see first class quality. So you'll see the Mauser banner on the front receiver ring. That's, that's the way the Mauser should be made. But the Norinco is a close copy, and people are telling me, and maybe I read somewhere, what a fantastic action, that the Norinco is a copy or very similar to the Yugoslavian Mauser, which I don't have. But I have other Mausers, so I compared it to the Mexican Mauser, and maybe we can close in on the... I've examined these. These are all unloaded. Actually, I was playing with the bolts. I was trying to see whether a bolt would be interchangeable, or at least partly. And this is the Mexican 1955. I used to really like these Mexican Mausers as a collectible item, and I still do, but I sold my collection, but I kept this one. They all shoot very well, and this one's 7.62 millimeters, model 54, and then on the top of the action at the crest is 1955 or 58. I can't quite make it out. This is a bit of a sidetrack, but you'll probably enjoy it anyway. And then this is probably one of the most magnificent military Mausers ever made. This is the Peruvian Mauser. It has the cool bolt release, and everything about this is first class. And on the side of the action, it's very small to film. Waffenfabrik Mauser Oberndorf am Neckar, would say Modello 1909. Wonderful rifle. There's a Husqvarna over there. So what was the point of all that? Well, I was going to just show you that the Mexican Mauser bolt, they all actually fit the Norinco, some better than others. And this doesn't mean really anything. It's just the curiosity of a collector. And then, it doesn't close, of course, which you wouldn't expect it to, because this Norinco action is shorter. It's that so-called intermediate action, which is ideal for 308. It has some kind of a matte finish on the metal, which is fine. And everything does what it's supposed to do. So that's the core of the rifle. Here's something interesting. I wondered why they would make the front receiver ring that long. And I don't have conclusive evidence, but the scope base mounting holes, normally when you look, especially at the front hole, you can see evidence of threading on the barrel through that front hole. I took a flashlight, and a magnifier, and my big magnifier, and I can't see any evidence of threading, but there may well be threading or partial threading, who knows. But that would be one way to press fit the barrel in place. And again, it doesn't really matter because it shoots so well and is so relatively inexpensive. Oh, and folks are concerned about scope bases. I've had these kinds of rifles before, and not just Norinco products, where people have drilled and tapped, and because I've been collecting for so long, and the people I bought them from are frequently not with us, so I don't know what jig they used. So I just put a front base on, and it's normally possible to match up a Weaver base with the front receiver ring. And most of the time, that's all I need. Especially if you use the straight tube scope, but that's just my simple world and simple solution. I've never had a problem doing that. But on this one, not really necessary to put a scope because the iron sights are excellent. And my magnet seems to adhere to everything on this rifle. This is all steel everywhere. So let's take a look at the bottom metal. This is from that beautiful original Mauser. So you can see these things are familiar to you. And here's the Norinco. Actually hard to tell them apart, except the length is, of course, slightly different. The Norinco is is slightly shorter, as they tell me that Yugoslavian Model 24. And I invite everybody always to research and learn more than I'm able to convey to you here. But at the core is a fantastic Mauser action. So, oh, what's this? This is a VZ24. I bought this a while ago, like many years. Excellent action. The only reason I bring it to your attention is it's sort of accurized by Fulton Armory in the UK, and they welded a plate on the bottom of the action, which I thought was kind of interesting. This is all I have. I didn't get the barrel or anything like that, but maybe one day I'll assemble something. Anyway, another very slick bolt action, and I have these bolts on the table only because, as I was saying, I was comparing the Norinco and kind of getting a feeling for the hardness. I wish I had a Rockwell hardness tester. I have a feeling that this Norinco steel is excellent. Oh, and here's that Siamese Mauser. I've shown it to you before. I often use it as an example of an excellent Mauser action, even though it isn't an original Mauser action. It's beautifully made. You don't necessarily need to know what you're doing with many things, so long as you copy something or someone who did know what they were doing. And so Mauser actions can be excellent. There's a whole variety of them. So getting back to the Norinco, yeah, that is a notably light stock. The action, it fits in there, and you're going to see the generous tolerances, and people may laugh out loud, but it's practical gun making. There's, we become so, in a way, obsessed with cosmetics, but a rifle has a very simple purpose, and the Norinco accomplishes that. So we'll leave that bottom metal out because it's just too difficult to get it in and out. And the bolt, you can hear there's a certain graininess to that sound. And if it bothers you, which it really doesn't need to bother you, but you could smooth that out. I've sometimes in the past, when it mattered to me, I would use valve grinding compound. And the trigger, a lot of people are, trigger experts. I'm not a trigger expert. But definitely, I think that's a fine trigger. I don't know what they put on here or copied, but there's nothing wrong with the trigger. So altogether, you can probably tell where I'm headed. My conclusion is this is a fine rifle. It may not have the looks that everybody's expecting these days. On the other hand, when you're plunging through the undergrowth, I should show you that. There's some interesting chips happening. Anyway, getting back to the undergrowth, and you're worried about your rifle, this maybe is a rifle that you don't need to worry about. And I'm glad they chambered it in 308. I don't know the origin of these. I don't know how it is that they exist. Somebody must have placed an order for 10,000 or something, because those factories, they don't retool lightly. It's a big deal to tool up for something like this, and then over time somehow they ended up over here. But I can't see how they would really hurt any collection, and I actually look forward to heading out and shooting. There's something about practical guns. Yeah, there's a little bit of sticking, but this all smooths out. You know this from other Mausers. They actually, like Winchesters, they get better and better as you use them. The bore was notably bright when I first used the rifle, and I think it might be chrome plated, but again, you would know better. That's a long receiver ring. What did I do? I was trying to remember if I had a bolt rifle with a receiver ring that long, and maybe one of these Mausers that you know about does have the really long receiver ring, and it's hidden by the wood. I don't know, but I do have one rifle here with a even longer bearing surface. So this is threaded in. This is an SSG. It's also a 308. Also fantastically accurate rifle. Oh, and people ask, Yeah, I mean the Norinco is probably an inch and a half to 3 inches. Nothing wrong with that at all. And you know, when we go shooting, I shoot that metal gong, and we usually shoot at 50 yards and then 100 yards with the sights. And I didn't have to touch the sights. I think they just align them somehow mechanically at the factory, or maybe they test fire, I'm not sure. But no problem at all hitting that gong, and that's like a foot by a foot, maybe a little bigger. Anyhow, I hope that's useful to you. I don't know how many of these are in the market, but there seem to be a few. Great North Guns sent me this one, and truly, I mean, I took it apart and fiddled with that bolt handle and the inletting for the bolt handle. But did I really need to do that? Maybe not a bad idea. But I actually like working on guns, so I have no problem. And at the price they're going, and I don't want to refer to a price because every time I do, the price changes. Usually it goes up, and not because of me, but the market conditions. So, but very inexpensive, and we're running out of actually Mausers. I hope Serbia cranks out some more Mark 10s. The Zastavas, but I haven't seen those for a while. And Brno is shifted to, a different design. Anyway, I could talk for a long time about Mausers, but I think I'll leave it at that. So Norinco 334, excellent, and Great North Guns, thanks for sending this. I think it's something quite useful. That's the best way to conclude it. I've been really eager to make a video on this Norinco 334. As you can see, it's a Mauser, and altogether I shot it a few times, and it's quite an accurate rifle. I would say between an inch and a half and 3 inches, depending on the shooter and ammunition. But I was more looking for evidence of quality manufacture or quality control. Frankly, most of the guns I bought from China were excellent and rugged. And I fired a few rounds here, and I look at things like the indentation of the primer and what the case looks like after firing, just to see how they chambered it. And I'm shooting the always excellent Aguila, or Aguila as some people pronounce it, ammunition from Mexico. Just superb stuff. Anyway, I don't represent them or anything, just always good to use that ammo. So yeah, 308 Winchester, Norinco. I have no idea when it was made. The stock is some kind of jungle wood, and although it looks like walnut, well, I mean, it's possible that it's walnut, but I think it's too soft to be walnut, but it's entirely fine for a rifle stock. The inletting is a little rugged, and I don't want to say what the price is. Every time I do that, it depends what jurisdiction you're in, what country, and then inflation seems to be making everything more expensive almost daily. So let's put it this way, it's a very inexpensive rifle, especially considering it's a essentially brand new Mauser, and you can see Norinco marked it as they usually do. Very, very fine rifle. A couple of things. I didn't try to put a scope on it because the metallic sights are so excellent, and I took a magnet to everything, and this looks a lot like a Remington rear sight, but it must be manufactured by Norinco, and it's steel. Magnet sticks to it. It's got a robust ramp front sight and everything. Actually, I like everything about this rifle, but what, rather than talk about it, it's got a floor plate, and there's some creative inletting happening here. There's some gouges, but who knows the history of this rifle? It could have been that these actions were stored somewhere and then somebody decided to put a stock on there. So we'll just put our shooting glasses on, and you can see the shaping of the buttstock is actually quite good. It has a decent cheek piece and even a bit of a shadow line there, and everything else is just typical Mauser. I guess I could put more rounds in than I do. It might take 4 shots in the magazine, I'm not sure. I always, especially when I'm filming, I try to stick with 3, although I don't always. So that's normal, you would expect that. Feeding, everything normal. And we set up you know, just the usual. Well, I've got the gong, but I've got a pie plate too. Maybe we'll see what it groups this close range, but nevertheless, we'll take a look. So it has a blade extractor and a blade ejector, I should say. So it should typically fly out. Now I don't know whether that was me or, you know, what have you, but let's see how the rest goes. Yeah, as usual, you know, with Mausers, the rougher you are with them, typically, the better they work. I mean, I can't see really a deficiency other than the appearance of the rifle. Oh, I did have to do one thing. I noticed when I was closing the bolt right after I bought it, that the bolt didn't have a metallic sound. It sounded like it was hitting wood. So I put some white nail polish on the bottom of the bolt, and sure enough, it was hitting the stock. So I took the Dremel, deepened this groove, and now the bolt stops when it hits the side of the action, which is where it's supposed to stop. But was it safe before? It was entirely safe. We're talking, you know, minimal distance, but that's why it's got that odd look around the inletting for the bolt handle. And I could easily clean up, see all these gaps? They may not look pretty. On the other hand, you definitely will get a split stock. Same there. That can all be filled and made to look better. But altogether, why would you? It shoots perfectly. And for that price, and I took it out of the, of course, stock. And the inletting is fine. There's even a recoil lug in there. So, not speaking for Norinco or anything like that. I think it's an excellent rifle. Oh, and the trigger is good. It's not a military trigger, some kind of, you know, adapted design, but nevertheless, still quite good. I also checked to see whether the bore was chrome plated, and I have a hunch that it is. They like doing that in China, chrome plating the bores, which is probably a good idea. Anyhow, I hope that's helpful to those of you that were asking me about the Norinco 308. I see nothing really wrong with it. You could probably hunt for a very long time. Somebody was saying something goes wrong with the bolt, but I mean, something can go wrong with anything. But so far so good with this one. And sorry, we have a fire here. I'll do a lot more shooting. If something goes wrong, I'll report back to you. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.